मजा नहीं आया.
Limiting though.
90% jargon.
Is that enough? What I'm going to do is I'm going to fulfill a wonderful wish for you just before we enter into the new year or whatever, right? Is this going to be in part of the new year, or is this going to be
After
it's in the new year? Okay, so here's a good way. Here's a good way in which we can look at you having a wish list. Okay, so what would you wish for if you were an agency? I know we aren't a typical agency. What would you wish for that the client actually does when they're briefing you? What will be ideal?
Tells me exactly what they have in mind so that the feedback isn't maza nahi aaya.
No, I understand, and that's fine. But let's get a little more specific about it. When you say, tell me exactly what they have in mind, isn't that limiting though?
Okay, so I get, limiting in what way?
Limiting in what way? Like, for example, if they tell you exactly what they have in mind, then you will not be able to actually delight them as an agency with the value that you're adding.
Yeah. So I think there are two bits about what exactly you have in mind. One is obviously the execution side of things, which is something that is best left to the agency because they are the subject matter experts in it. And the second bit is, of course, the where the company is coming from, the vision, mission, not of the company, but for the particular campaign or whatever the agency is being hired for, who the audience is, what the company has in mind in the sense, what exactly do they want out of this campaign, or what they want this campaign should achieve at the end of the day. So generally what happens is we have a good brief format like get, who, do, buy, right? So but what happens with that is in get, you get a market share, or you get to the top of the industry and all of that. That is what is included in get, right? But the specific tactics somewhere get missed out by the companies. Like these are the platforms that this ad is going to run on. These are the formats that we're going to run the ad on, or maybe there is no clear brief. We might use the ad, or we might use the campaign in any way that we wish to. So generally what happens is when we are trying to build a brand film, right? So there are a number of challenges that the agencies face. Now, first is obviously in the brief, the target audience, the market, the demography, everything that is included, right? What the end goals are, like we want acquisitions or retentions and all of that stuff. That gets included. But somewhere, what gets missed is that this is where this campaign is going to be in the pipeline. Right, we perhaps are going to launch a new brand, and these are all the campaigns that have already been included in this particular brand launch or a product launch, and this is where this campaign that we are giving you to make is going to fit in our entire pipeline. So what happens is what the agency ends up making does not resonate with anything else that is happening within that campaign or that launch. So let's
delve a little deeper in it. Imagine that you're somebody who's like interacting with a client for the first time, right? When you're interacting with a client for, let's say, the 10th time, I can understand that you've got a certain pattern of working. You understand what is going on. You understand the people better. But if you're going to work with the client for the first time as an agency, and you get a written brief in the format that you mentioned, is that enough?
No, definitely it's not enough. You need to have an interaction with the client, exactly what they are thinking of. Because what happens is, first of all, even on the client side, there's a lot of Chinese whisper happening from what the founder wants to what the brand manager wants, to what the marketing manager wants, and then finally the person who is briefing the agency wants, right? So as an agency, I might deliver what the Spock is giving me, but that does not align with what the founder really has in mind. And again, that does not align with maybe what the product team has in mind or what the sales team has in mind. Right. So somewhere, whatever I make as an agency resonates with the person who gave the brief. Provided that I am a good agency, it resonates with the person who made the brief or gave me the briefing, but it does not resonate with the dotted mapping, the stakeholders all around, or the founder of the company and everything. And so what happens at the end of the day, because on the feedback call, all of them are present. Right, and they don't know the background, they don't know the context, they don't know what the agency was given, and they don't know what led the agency to make what they made. And then the feedback unanimously comes, maza nahi aaya, because it's not moving the needle.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, like, for example, if I was in the client's place, right, as the point of contact, the first thing that I would say is, hey, this is how we work. Maybe, what I mean is that this is how we work. This is my boss. These are my colleagues who will be interested in the communication. We will need to get their buy-in. This is the way in which I expect things to happen. This is my working style. This is the way in which I give feedback. This is the way in which my boss gives feedback. There are things that I can fight my boss with. There are things that I can't fight with. There are ways in which our communication can get watered down, or no, I have complete say. Whatever. Yes, there are more. There is probably about 4 iterations that typically happen, and most people think that they have given you. So that sort of briefing, yeah, should be actually part of the briefing that happens. Most of the times, what tends to happen is that you think that if you tick the boxes again, and if you put that to format thing, who's the TG, what is going on, it actually literally solves the thing. And I think that what you're alluding to is probably what clients should be doing more when they're briefing agencies. Does that make sense?
In fact, I would say take a step back and involve the agency before your actual briefing happens, right? While the brainstorming process is going on. So I'll give you an instant. I was freelancing for an agency, and so first of all, I didn't know whether I was supposed to make the brand strategy for them, whether I was supposed to make the actual campaign for them, or make the copy for them. Like what was going on, I didn't know, right? That was actually my first touch point with that agency, with that client, right? So what happened at the I mean, they had all the context, and they gave me the brief, right?
Yeah.
But what happened was I was completely lost in the sense, where do I stand in with this? Because in one call I was there with, where the brainstorming for the Miro board was going on, which was for another product of the company, and then suddenly we were making a ad campaign for that company, and I didn't know whether I was supposed to do the ideas for the ad campaign, or whether I was supposed to revamp or bring the cultural nuances for that campaign. Like what exactly was happening, I didn't know, because I didn't know anything about the agency or the company that we were working
with. You're actually saying something even better. For an agency would be to actually understand which are the other agencies in play, right? So for example, if you're a brand agency, what's the social agency? Okay, who's actually in charge of the retail communications? Who's actually in charge of the PR? What exactly is going on? What's the structure? When do I come in? What actually gets handed to me? And most times what I've seen,
then also, like what I'm making is how is it getting disseminated, right?
Yes.
Or who is going to do the disseminating? Because then I would make my campaign or whatever I am doing very much in line with the strengths of perhaps those agencies. Like what I'm making might be different for how Ogilvy disseminates, will be different from how Sotiers or Shebang disseminates and all of that stuff. So
yeah, no, I think that all of those things is probably what wise or enlightened clients do. But when you go down the chain, and when you look at first-time founders, or when you're looking at SMEs, or when you're looking at people used to a very structured way in which they're living life because of the sectors that they are working in, they find all this very difficult to actually understand. Because what is really happening is that they think, okay, it's like an A is equal to B sort of situation. I'll give a brief, and that's how it goes. What I think clients don't understand is the amount of generalities that they're actually using, which agencies find very difficult to understand.
Yeah.
And you can say the same thing to agencies as well, but the fact is that there is a big communication issue with agencies. It's ironic that this is the case, because the scenario that you described, I could actually visualize it, right? You're trying to figure out head and tail out of what is going on. You're trying to learn so many things at the same time, and you're being thrown new things at you, and then you're supposed to, and you don't even know what you're doing at that stage. That's
and really briefs are honestly 90% jargon, right? You're throwing out stuff like market segmentation and all of that stuff. Great, I've learned that in marketing. What do I do out of it, right? And I think that is one of the biggest problems that clients have. Like the brief, what they have in mind doesn't get translated when they're actually briefing. I'm fine with the format. Use whatever format. Hell, I don't even mind if you just send a voice note. That actually might make things clearer for an agency, right? But at the end of the day, the agency doesn't want to know 18 to 24-year-old male or American audience and all of that stuff. That's okay. I mean, that's something that an agency, a good competent agency, might be able to figure out just by looking at the product also. Very honestly, right? But what we really need is what kind of nuances are you looking for? What kind of emotional stuff do you want the end customer or the viewer to tap into when they're looking at your ad campaign, or when you're doing the targeting? Because that is something that the agency will not know until and unless they have the data and they don't have the data. Now, this is what brings me to the second point, right? We touched upon this, and in our last video, when we were talking about how to evaluate agencies, we spoke about how agencies are generally considered as waiters by the companies, right? I think this is one of the biggest problems, that clients generally do not consider agencies as partners. They consider them as the last execution touch point, right? And this is where the biggest problem comes in, because they keep things very much in a black box. The clients keep everything in a black box. They do the brainstorming, they do the strategy and everything, all of that stuff. And once they have the strategy finalized, then they go to the agency. But then by that time, everything is so much convoluted that, what the agency gets is only maybe 5% of what the company actually wants to bring out. And that is where everything becomes a jargon. So if you stop looking at agencies as waiters or executors, and you start looking at them as partners in your strategy, you will involve the agency much before, while the actual brainstorming is going on. And that is when, it becomes easier for the agency to understand where you're coming from and where this campaign is going to lead, and, who are the other stakeholders or other stakeholder agencies that are going to be in the picture once the campaign starts.
Let me add more weight to that. What I think we are witnessing right now is an era wherein we are moving from a waterfall linear sort of situation to an continuously iterative sort of situation. So if your agency is not a partner and trying out experiments with you of communication and getting feedback in, whether it's a social media agency or an organic content agency or an influencer driven agency or a brand agency, it doesn't matter. If your agency is not partnering you in these experiments, you are going to fail. So the whole era of actually, getting into a situation wherein we've got the strategy locked and now it's time to get the agency to do its work is gone. Now, I wanted to add one more thing to it, which is really critical. You spoke something interesting just a while back, which was about, okay, don't tell me what the TG of the thing is, right? Or don't tell me what what I can learn from a marketing book. So the critical thing is the question I think every agency should be asking clients is, what is it that you can tell me that I don't know already about your product? Yeah, because this signifies confidence in the fact that you have done your work. You know this. So imagine if the process gets flipped and the agency says, okay, let me tell you what I understand. And I'll make a presentation. And the whole idea of this presentation is for you to tell me, oh, no, this is not the way it is. Okay. And let me add a bit there. So actually have a dialogue. How do you think that sort of thing?
Yeah. And I think this is some where agencies are at fault. Right? Because you see, the clients, they have the context. So when you have the context, it becomes very difficult for you to break things down, because it's already very clear in your head. But as an agency, the onus or the burden of the proof is on you. So what generally happens is, during a pitch, the focus of any agency or any freelancer or any consultant is trying to get the project. Right? This is where they start and this is where they end. And every agency more or less is like, okay, let us get the mandate and then we'll figure it out. But the problem is, by that time, the client already expects you to know the mandate by the time you get the mandate, right? And then it becomes difficult to ask this type of question. So generally, we begin with workshops. Right. The reason we begin with workshops is so that we can understand, the why, what of any mandate, any company, any CEO, any founder. Right. And the reason for that is not to, pry or to know their ins and outs. That is to understand the answers to the questions that we might not think of asking.
Basically, I think assumptions are the mother of everything terrible in this world. And I think a lot of times the client assumes that the agency's got it. Okay, and the agency assumes that the client understands what they're saying as well, and this can continue even in longer relationships between agency and client, but especially at the beginning of any sort of relationship with the agency, these sort of things can happen, especially if you probably know the person from an earlier client role or from an earlier agency role, and this sort of shortchanging sometimes works to the detriment of both client and agency. Now, if I ask that question, so if I explain, okay, this is what I know, and the client actually explains, okay, you know what, you got these parts right, I think you need a little more info on this, then I'll ask, once that information is given, and that information can be about product, can be about customers, can be about markets, can be about plans, can be about goals, a mixture of these. Then I will probably get into some deeper questions saying, okay, have you really understood the neurological imperative of of the consumer. Okay,
Yeah.
have you really understood what is shifting behavioral patterns in the past 3 months? So those sort of questions are the questions that if the client has data,
Yeah.
if the client doesn't have data, then you'll have to figure
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah.
But I think that those kind of questions are completely missing in a brief. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'll give you an instance. When I was in a previous company that I was working with, right, we were hiring an agency to do a brand film for us. So the initial brief that came from the brand manager, and the brief contained all the all the right things. The checklist was all there, the get to do by and the demography and all of that stuff. It was like absolutely perfect. And then she added, these are the videos, the kind of work that we have done in the past, etc., etc. Right. Now, what happened was that the end result that the agency gave, most of it was already something that we had tried earlier that had not worked for us.
Yeah.
Right? And this is a very, very common problem. Why? Because you have run perhaps hundreds of experiments. Some of them worked, some of them did not work. There was always a reason why, not just behind why the campaign didn't work, but why you actually ran the campaign. And both these whys are absolutely missing out of the brief, or the the previous works that we have done, right? The previous works that we have done is generally given as, this is our brand color, this is our brand font, this is how the kind of ads we make, etc. But they're not given in a way that gives a context to an agency. So I revamped the entire brief, and I gave the last few campaigns that we had run. Most before the brand film, that was supposed to be a brand film, but the previous ones are all performance marketing campaigns that we had run. So I gave all the context, like this was the campaign run for this product, for this target audience. This is the kind of ads that work. These are the ads that did not work, and this is our hypothesis why they did not work. Right, and we did that for the last 3-4 campaigns that we had run. Now, with that, the end result that was produced by the agency was much sharper and much more in line with what we had wanted. Right?
That's really interesting. I love what you did, and I think that is probably that should be titled as, let me tell you how we ended up here. So I think that is absolutely critical, because I don't think that this question is asked, because people go through these processes, right? So instead of saying, oh, you've done this wrong and you've done that wrong and all of that, so let me tell you how we ended up here. We might have gotten a few things right, we might have gotten a few things wrong. Maybe the same things will work now, or whatever you're proposing, but this is how it is. I think that's critical. I mean, I wish I had a brief where which said, okay, this is how the corpus callosum will actually get impacted by a festival time in my target persona. But till the time that we reach there, what we have to understand is that the world of the agency doing all this, oh, let me kind of educate them here, and then let me convert them here, and let me, is gone. I think that it is directly connected to the messaging. Every message has to stand for itself. And look at the world that we're getting into with AEO replacing SEO. We have got to understand that it is an iterative thing. You have to contribute value. And for that, your agency needs to understand way much more than just technical MBA-like jargon that is thrown.
Yeah. True. I think, one of the biggest problems why the agency problem has started now, earlier there used to be an HUL who used to work with Ogilvy from, a very long time. Right. So there was one Piyush Pandey handling all of the campaigns. So Piyush Pandey knew in and out of an HUL or a Pidilite. Right, so whoever was handling that particular campaign, right, be it the social side of social side of Ogilvy, or be it the PR side of Ogilvy, or whatever, the creative director knew. So the creative director knew the product in and out, the people in and out, what kind of stuff would Madhukar Parekh like, and everything was there. Now, for every bit and pieces, for every new campaign, we hire a new touchpoint agency. Now, it's not the company's fault also, because the agencies are very, very specialized and they're boutique agencies, and we prefer working with the boutique agencies, especially for a small company or a startup, right? But then, what is missing in the relationship side of things has to come out in the brief side of things, or in the partnership side of things. Right, and that is something very much missing from the entire process. I wouldn't say it's missing from brief, because brief is just one document that goes. Brief is basically like the minutes of the meeting, but you have to make the agency part of the entire meeting first. And by that I mean, right from the point where you're thinking of running this campaign, why you are running this campaign, like you said, how did we get here, to the point of what should we do next.
Yeah. No, and I would add to this. I would have an emotional overlay to the brief. Like, exactly how should this person be feeling after,
Yeah.
and while people do a little bit of that, like whatever, but it's still a generality that is normally written. It is not written in a very specific way that, okay, I want this guy to be salivating with when he sees this, or that sort of detailing which talks about the emotional overlay completely is missing. I think because both the client and agency want to come across as if they're
That's smart.
rational, and smart, right?
Yeah.
And they are having this rational, smart conversations with each other. And yes, so I think what you have to realize is it's fucking messy, and it's not just messy, but it's also complicated. And human skulls have something which is really complicated inside those skulls, and you're trying to decipher that. So the way in which you have to do it is you got to get real. You can't get rational. You got to get real, and real means emotionality.
Yeah, yeah. I think when you're writing a brief as a marketing manager, don't be a marketing manager, be the agency. Right?
That's a good
Put
one.
yourself
Yeah.
in the shoes or the mind of the agency and actually live and breathe that agency person. Live and breathe that account manager, or that creative director, and write the brief according to that. I think that will change a lot of things. At least take care of the 60% of the problems, because you're right, like the emotions and everything, it's there. But again, it's very much jargon. I want them to feel happy. I want them to feel, oh, anything makes you feel happy.
Yeah.
I could put an ice cream in the goddamn doodoo ad, it'll still make them happy.
I know. I know. I understand completely. I think that you should have objectives. Probably my last point in this conversation would be you should have objectives as to where you need to reach with an agency if you're a client. Like, okay, in 3 months' time, the agency needs to understand my shorthand. Okay, the agency needs to get my brief the first time round in 6 months. I need to be like this when challenged by the agency or something like that. So if you have a benchmark, which is an internal benchmark for a client that allows them to understand how that relationship is progressing with the agency, that will really be useful, because all that time investment has to go in with people. I understand people leave, especially on the agency sides, people leave, but there is a lot of learning there that happens when you're dealing with people, and when you're actually understanding, okay, so what can I improve next time when I'm speaking with an agency? Yeah. How can I get better results?
Yeah, I think most of this problem will get taken care of if you stop looking at client and agency as a supervisor and subordinate, but actually start looking at co-creating the story. I think the co-creation element is mostly missing out. What happens is the client briefs the agency and it's like, okay, start the storyboarding, get the approval, and then move on, right?
Yeah.
But even during the storyboarding stage, there is a lot of co-creation that can happen. Right, it can actually be about what my story is. Let's discuss the story. Let's discuss what is going to go in the script. Even if it's a performance marketing agency, what is the story behind your campaign? What is going to be your bidding strategy? Right, why that this is going to happen? Let us co-create first, and then get to the storyboarding stage.
It does require enlightenment from both sides, though. I mean, you have to keep there has to be an ego death, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah, that is a big point. There has to be an ego death. Right?
Yeah.
There has to be a partnership model. It cannot be handing it out to somebody. It cannot be transactional. It cannot mean that I'm giving you money, I expect this kind of work. It cannot be that way. Once the initial bill has changed hands, then you are no longer client and agency, then you're just partners. So half of these problems get solved if you work as partners, honestly.
Yeah. Now, if I was an agency, I would probably give my client some input on what have I learned about our customer in the past week.
Yeah.
Okay. And just keep adding to it. And you can say, I've learned nothing. It can be one line. I've learned nothing new, which is still okay. But I think that sort of co-creation of stories.
Yeah, I mean, if you just stop trying to sound smart, then you actually might deliver a product that's smart.
Yeah, I agree. Good way to stop this conversation. All right, good. We got something.